Good morning. After making some telephone calls and getting no satisfactory response, I wrote a letter to the District 2 George Nugent councilman or whatever he is, and Rick Ramsey, the sheriff, uh, alerting them to the fact that the bridges are dangerous for cyclists, and also how dangerous Scout Key is for cyclists. And I gave them some suggestions in my not so um, diplomatic way. What can I say? Uh, Rick told me to do it myself. That's what he said. He wrote me back and said, "Go out there and do it yourself. That's not my job. That's the state's job." George Nugent never got back to me. But then, and I have that in writing too, by the way. And he also said that I disrespected him. And if I disrespect him, expect the same in return, which is almost a veiled threat, if you ask me. I respect police officers, but Rick Ramsey is an elected official. He's an elected official. Um, and there's a whole different ball game. So, I'm going to move on. Rick did do something. They contacted a James Wolf from the state because Rick said those aren't our bridges, those are state bridges. Well, tell a husband and wife coming over the bridges that when something bad happens, Well, it wasn't my responsibility. So I didn't know who to call. I called the sheriff and I called my councilman. What the hell else do you do? So anyway, so this guy James Wolf from the state calls me and says, "Oh, they've been doing a great job, blah blah blah." And I'm looking at the bridges, and I rode my bicycle the other day across the bridge. Scout Key, you take your life in your hand. And the bridges, you got to push yourself out so far from the guardrail because of all the debris that you're really minimizing the margin of error on those cars looking in the sun and doing their texting and their cell phones. Something's bound to happen if it already hasn't. So, make a long story short, James Wolf passed it off to another guy, a guy from Marathon, Joshua Kaiser, who told me that the crews had made several passes over the bridges, and I sort of, and shied away from Scout Key at all, and we had a email interaction, and I was sort of convinced that they were doing their job until today, because it dawned on me what happened. Maybe those guys did go out and clean off clean some debris off those bridges. Uh, but then driving yesterday, it all became perfectly clear to me. And I want to tell you, how inept uh, government and workers and government managers are. How inept they are. In this particular individual situation, this is how inept they are. Uh, my guess by driving over the bridges yesterday is that they probably did come out and pick up some of those large pieces of metal. But these workers, they didn't bring a broom. The stones are there, the glass is there, the pebbles are there. So yeah, maybe they made passes. Is if you asked a couple of kids to if you did a project in your driveway, and you asked a couple of kids to come out and clean your driveway, um, and they picked up all the project debris, but never swept the stones and glass off your driveway, would you pay those kids? I wouldn't. I'd pay them half, or I'd make them finish the job. So we have a guy in Marathon telling us all these bridges have been swept, and yet the bridges are still dangerous. And Scout Key is a death trap. It's a death trap. And the cyclists aren't here yet because the keys are expensive right now. But in another month after Easter, the cyclist tandems, those husband and wife pairs with backpacks on that can't really afford the $300 motel, they're all coming down soon. And they're going to be hit with a big surprise when they get to certain areas of these keys. It should almost be a notice, If be prepared for different conditions than you're used to. Because it's been 6 months since the storm, and Joshua Kaiser at 305-363-4758 defines cleaning the roads and bridges as picking up probably the metal and the big pieces of wood, you know, and I don't know, maybe big pieces of wood with nails in it, and palm fronds. I'm sure they got some of them off. But bicyclists still can't ride on the bridges without going 5 feet from the wall. That doesn't make it any safer. You know, for a road crew, that all they have to do is what their boss tells them to do. Clean the friggin' bridges. And they're so friggin' lazy, inept, or poorly managed that they leave anything behind that looks like it might have been there before the storm. Some of it might have, but a lot of it wasn't. So call up Rick, call up George Nugent, wherever he's from. He's from here. Call up James Wolfe at the state. And Joshua, I'm going to give Joshua the benefit of the doubt. He at least didn't treat me with hostility. Rick Ramsey certainly treated me with hostility. And Joshua, he might not know it. He might be a bad manager. I don't see how he can live in Marathon and not know that they're not doing their job properly. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. His number's 305-363-4758. Let's do this, you know. Me alone, you know, I don't like getting veiled threats from elected officials, especially when they're sheriffs. That's all I have to say. I hope that the bridges are cleaned. I hope that people wear helmets, that pedestrians and cyclists are protected. I hope motor vehicle operators keep a close eye on the roads, you know. Thank you very much. Bye.